Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mossenson Galleries at 115 Hay Street in Subiaco. We're here to have an interview and a discussion with the artist Desmond Mah, whose works are on display in the walls surrounding us. The display, in fact, takes place as part of IOTA 24, which is the craft triennial currently being held in Western Australia. The gallery is located on Noongar land, and I pay my respects to the Whadjuk Noongar people. I acknowledge elders past and present, and also the traditional owners of this country. Our presentation is going to have three parts. I'll commence by asking Desmond some questions about his background and his upbringing and his training as an artist, and then we'll listen to him talking about the art that is currently on display, followed by some questions from members of the audience, if you're so inclined, or even some statements or reactions to what Desmond has had to say about his art practice. If we could start the ball rolling, please, Desmond, by having you give us some insight into your upbringing and your background and how you came to become an artist.
Thank you, Dan. So my name is Desmond Mah. I'm born in Singapore. So during the time when I was growing up in Singapore, it was like between the late 70s to the early 80s. So like a very productive period of time where Singapore trying to ascertain their own survival, meaning they will have a lot of economy, meaning encouraging parents to go out and work. So my mom, she's a seamstress, and she don't have time for me, so she would just tell me, say, take the bus and go stay over at your grandparents' place. So I would do that every weekend. I would go there, and my grandfather's place is special because in his one of the room is a Chinese temple. It has lots of Chinese idols and art. So that was my first art experience. I have never been to any contemporary gallery or understand what Western art is all about. So that was my first experience with art. So after that, I've moved to Perth during the late 80s, and it was interesting for me because when I was in schools in Singapore when I was told that British colonization is all right, if it has to happen, therefore we should thank the British for it. And every day in my school, I will recite a pledge like, we, the citizens of Singapore, we pledge ourselves as one united nation, irregardless race or religion. So that kind of ingrained in me that thinking that, racial equality is everywhere, I should be welcome in Perth. So when I moved to Perth, I was put into my place, all right? So I was told to go to F home where I come from, and everywhere I will see pictures of slanted eyes Asians. And on top of that, you have like Jack Van Tongeren who goes around firebombing Chinese restaurants. So it was crazy time for me. I've been trying to rationalize the thoughts, if only my father tell me about this, I wouldn't have moved to Perth. So it was hard because I'm trying to understand the idea of identity, why am I not accepted, and it was difficult. So fast track, and then I went back to Singapore. I did my national service. I was in the army. After army experience, I decided to study in an art school. I wanted to do graphic design, but my lecturer said, no, you need to do fine arts. Corrupted my mind. And here am I. And I have got a scholarship. I went to the UK and studied. And after that, I worked as an art teacher in Singapore. And until I had my first child, I told my wife, I do not want my child to have memories of going to a tuition center. I want her to have a proper childhood, so that's why we moved here. And here am I. I'm continuing as an artist. I have to just mention that 2017 is the year that I actually come out and just say, okay, let's give art a go. I do not want to regret not giving this a crack.
Well, you've confessed that you've been corrupted as an artist, but in the course of the corruption activity, can you explain what has been your artistic path to date?
Where I am now, it's a lot based on my own resilience of overcoming challenges. All right, it's not easy to be an artist in Perth, because it's so competitive. There's a lot of overlooking, so I have to find myself. Every now and then I question myself: why am I still doing this? Where you have so little support and things like that. But the most important thing is my family supported me. If my wife didn't give me the green light to go ahead to become an artist, all right, I don't think I will be able to create works like this. And to see how far I've practiced since 2017. She goes to work, every day I paint. So that's how I progress from this. And also, I was also very, very fortunate. I managed to do a few very important residencies. Okay, one important residency is the 2018 residency in Beijing with the Red Gate Gallery. At that time, it was good for me because my fraternal side grandfather, he's from China, but I have no idea how China is like and it's a good experience for me to go. And it was interesting when I was there, I was told that I might not be a pure Chinese. Then I asked the question, why am I not be a pure Chinese? Because of my surname Ma. So I didn't understand that. So why is it? Well, I thought Ma means horse, right? So what's the thing? So later on, I did a bit of research. I realized that Ma is actually short form for Muhammad. And 9 out of 10 Chinese with that surname has some sort of Persian connection. So that was very interesting for me. But I haven't done any genealogy tests yet. Maybe I should, and I'll find out for sure. So it was good because during the time I kind of like look at all the Chinese contemporary art and look at the possibilities of art, what my art can be. And it was very, very it's such an awesome experience. So when I came back, I've continued to do my work because I wanted to continue working with lines. And when I was doing my residency back in China, my mentor, he said to me, see, Desmond, I will challenge you now, try to make your lines smaller because my lines was very thick before. So I say, okay, I'll think about it. So 3 years, it took me 3 years at least to do it, and in COVID as well. COVID happened and it makes it easier for me to understand how do I develop lines like that, much smaller. So I've continue working towards that. And then the reason why I also want to work with lines like that because I've found out much later through my daughter's diagnosis that I have ADHD. And part of ADHD thinking is we think a lot of things all the time. And it's really difficult for me to focus. But with lines, it forced me to focus, meaning I could concentrate my colors within that one area. So that's how my process at the moment. I wanted to work with rice paper, also partly due to my trips to China. So I've never seen the Great Wall of China. I had an opportunity to visit the Great Wall of China. But the curious thing for me is I asked the question, what are the materials that's holding the bricks together? So I found out that it was actually rice. So rice is a very good material. It's an archival material. So I've thought about it, in that case, I can explore using Chinese rice paper. So that's how I go about making works with paper.
Over the last several years, Desmond, I've had the pleasure of seeing a range of your artistic endeavours, and the diversity of your art practice, could you explain to us what actually motivates you, what inspires you, what causes you to pick on the subjects that you do?
When COVID happened, it has impacted all of us in a very profound way. And I also feel that it was a missed opportunity, because that was a moment that we are all united by the same problem, but somehow it divided us. We have talking about anti-colonization messages and things like that. So I've looked at it, I say, wow, I don't really agree about the destructions of the monuments. Create another set of monuments that counter these monuments. So that kind of like drives me to understand that can I critique colonization without going to the point of like making it really disgusting and things like that. I feel that it's like too direct. Create works that is beautiful, and yet at the same time I'm criticizing colonization. So this is how I create that process of doing that. I was saying to some of you just now that, like for example, we spend so much time on the internet looking at things, and I realized that, can we utilize that experience and create that into my work? So at the same time, I'm thinking about how do I create the experience? How do I extend painting? How do I make contemporary paintings that are like that? So I thought about it. Most of these people that I paint, they are already dead, right? Maybe she will have voice recording of herself. The rest of them don't. So why can't I speculate on their voices, how their voices are like that? Like for example, if you look behind you, that one particular the sculpture piece, she's meant to be a victim of raffles, and victims do not have voice. So can I create a voice for her? So what I did is I tried to think about using AI, using my own script, and create a generated voice. And that's how I think about bring the meta space and be integrated into the part of the work.
What are your ambitions? What are your hopes and expectations as an artist?
I had the privilege of showing in Sydney before. With my previous gallery, I had the privilege of meeting Tony Costa. Tony Costa was the Archibald winner. 1 year, 2 years before he won the Archibald, he tell me these words. He said, "Desmond, I'm so excited for you to be here, but I have to caution you. You have to take whatever the art world tells you with a bucket of salt." And I didn't understand his point back then, but over time, that sank in. I realized that it is like that. You have to take everything with a bucket of salt. Want to say that I am ambitious. I'm 50 now, and most people will not give me any opportunity. They will say, "Oh, you're not young. We have this condition that this opportunity can only be given to people who are 35 and below." I've not graduated from a Australian university. I'm not going to get scholarship. Like for example, last year I was accepted into Royal College of Art in London, and it's a top uni across the world. I had to turn it down because I couldn't find any scholarship. But that doesn't mean that I was bitter. Nah, I used that as a fuel to push myself further. So what I did is end up taking up the Fremantle Art Centre's residency, and that's how I came about creating this idea of using paper and paint and work them together. So everything happened for a reason, you know. I would like to challenge myself and maybe be a person that could even give back to the community, trying to use my position as Singaporean yet Australian and create opportunities for WA artists, all right? And I feel that WA arts are not very well received nationally, if you look at the national picture. And sometimes you say, "Oh, across Australia," but you read between the lines across Australia, look at the people who got the award and things like that, none of them comes from WA. How can you say it's across Australia? I feel that we need to have more people like Ted Snell, who champions WA arts. I think somebody or some more people should step up and do this. And then we can compete with the other states.
Desmond, if we can now turn our attention specifically to the exhibition that's on display around these walls, starting with a reference to Darren Jorgensen's quote, Darren being an art critic, art teacher, art writer. Darren made this comment that you've displayed a layering thin spaghetti-like set of tubes of colour atop of each other to create a kind of relief painting, which he went on to say means that you've perfected a unique technique. So perhaps can you go into some little detail, if you like, as to the technique and the subject matter of these works?
This is a very difficult question to answer because if I tell you too much, I will reveal my technique. I think you can ask this question 10 years later when I become super famous. Then I will tell you the secrets, because then I'll just say you're just following my work, stealing my work. Well, okay, I can tell you a bit about the process. So,
You're not asking for this to be in confidence, are you?
Because of my ADHD, right? When I remember my time when I was in UK doing my work, my first set of work that I deal with is all abstract paintings. I have this preference of applying colors directly. I refuse to mix colors because my brain is not wired for that. So I say, oh man, this is terrible. I don't understand this. Only much later I realized because I have ADHD, that's why I couldn't think properly like normal people. So how I create this technique, as I say, I was working with texture. So what I did is, my earlier work I did is I gather materials from nature and mix it with paint and use that to build my lines. And then I didn't realize that when I did that, a few months later I realized there's something going on with my painting. There's lots of little dust on the work. I say, what's going on? I look at it, oh man, there are bugs everywhere eating my work. So I was like, wow, that's not what I want. Continue researching because during COVID you have nothing else to do, right, except look at my wife, look at my children. So I've continued making work like that. Then I found a way to create lines that are smaller. So I realized that, oh, can I use synthetic material like a synthetic polymer? Like if I squeeze that, and will that work? So I realized that it works because it does make my line smaller, and when I would not have any bug problem.
If you wouldn't mind approaching some of the paintings and give us a more specific description of what is intended to be conveyed.
All right. Before I go there, I will show you this. I brought this with me. So before I came out with that series with Cook, we're having that plimp, and this one, and that one, and that one. I was looking at the internet images. I say, how can I make something that's iconically powerful, yet iconically racist, and yet iconically intimidating? So I've thought about it. I have always liked this American painter named Philippe Gaston. Okay, Philippe Gaston painted the Ku Klux Klan, and I find his paintings humorous and yet sad at the same time. So I thought, wow, he's a portrayal of racism, racist figures in the Ku Klux Klan hat and smoking and things like that. I thought it's very profound. So how can I create figures like that? So I thought about it. I say, well, I recall back to the Jack Van Tongeren experience. Okay, because Jack Van Tongeren that I know is like a thug, going around and attacking Chinese restaurants. I really imagine if he's a thug going this, will he do it with his face on, or he wears a balaclava? So I thought about it. He probably mask himself and do things like that. So that's how I kind of think that, oh, can I use that image, that mask, and repurpose it into the plimp? Because the plimp is something that you will see in movies like Zulu, even in imagery of Melania Trump. And I thought, wow, that was so iconically racist. And there is still continuing conversation of that. So how can I turn that into a powerful icon? So that's how I came about creating that particular mask image, all right, making that reference to that. And then I started looking at the imperial state crown. So the imperial state crown has this second star Africa. I say, well, it was given to the British Empire during the time where the Dutch and the British decided they're going to stop fighting. They're going to say, okay, let's settle down and continue exploring South Africa. And during the time when they did that, they decided to give this gift to the British Empire. So I kind of reimagine if the crown is living, it's an alien species that living on top of Queen Elizabeth, what would he say? So I thought about it and then created this QR code, and then with this QR code, when you scan, it gives you a voice of the crown, and the voice will just say to you, oh, well, I really love having this diamond. It's like my heartbeat, even though it's artificial, but it's okay. I can't give it away. If I do, I'm not going to be the same. So it will create excuses like this. So I thought it's a profound statement to talk about stolen artifacts. How do you return them? Do we even return back to them? All my works that's here goes back to the first earlier on when I talk about my Chinese temple experience. Part of my Chinese temple experience I deal with was about this particular paper craft called zizha. So zizha is like a Chinese effigy making material. Like they will make Chinese effigies, they will make images of statues of dogs, humans, even your laptops, things like that, right? So that they can burn it as an offering. It embedded with concepts like memory, heritage, and cultural continuity. So with that sort of concepts and principles, I thought about it, can I use that to explore colonization? So this is how I came about using that particular Chinese funeral thing and then create these works. Yeah, am I with the fox, all right? So with this fox, I think in 2023, I went down to Denmark, as in South Denmark. I can't afford to go to Denmark in road, but the one that's south, I can afford it. I came across this dead fox by the side of the road. So I thought, wow, the fox is, even though it's dead, it's majestic, like, catches my attention. So I told my wife this, I say, I wanted to take the fox back, is that okay with you? The fox was swarmed with flies, the rotting carcass. My wife said to me, if you do that, you're going to walk home to Perth by yourself. So it didn't work. So I had to take out my camera and take lots and lots and lots of pictures. Make everyone wait, but take lots and lots of pictures. And I sat on the pictures for a long time. I didn't do anything. So only much later, I realized I have to find something conceptually to talk about. So I was looking at news of foxes wiping out the local natives who wouldn't stand a chance against the fox. So I thought about it and say, how interesting is that? And I also recall that as a child growing up, I was actually quite afraid of the fox. Because in Chinese mythology, the fox is seen as some sort of evil spirits that devours human beings. So I decided that why can't I create a fox and talk about this idea of invasion and predator. And now the fox is so-called part of the Australian environment now. Can we get rid of the fox? And I did more research about it and realized that no, you can't, because when you get rid of the fox, nobody's going to get rid of the mouse and the rabbits and the cats that's around. So they're all sort of integrated into the environment now. And it's a bit like understanding the idea of English, the language of English, right? So English, we all speak English, that's uniting all of us at the moment, right? So if we remove the English from our language, right, what happens? Can we still continue speaking a common language? So it's like you can't go back and change the time, but we can do better with what we have now. So go back to the fox again. I wanted to create the idea that fox is just wandering around like a thug, like a gangster. It's like, well, I know I'm the apex creature in the land, and therefore I decided to create little tattoos for the fox. So the tattoos is like religious iconography that I look at the the old Bible where they have images. So I thought, why can't I create that? Because it is also the idea of, on the comment on the idea when the whole idea of British colonization was also to, of colonization is also to spread the word of God and Christianity into the country. So I thought, why not I create that with the fox? And then if you look closely, if you can see some words that's coming up from his mouth. It says, I can't help myself. So so my technique of working it like that is to force people to look at my work in order to not just quickly say, okay, nice, and just move on. I wanted to draw people to the work. Laborer number 38. Okay, we know if you've been to Singapore, we'll look at Raffles. Raffles will always be known as the founder of Singapore. And beyond that, you do not see anything because his image is so quickly cleaned, right? Right now, researchers are finding out more things about him, and he's not as clean as what he claimed he used to be. So one of the shenanigans of a clandestine operation that the British did is they wanted to kick the Dutch out of Asia. So what they did is they created a port in Singapore. Before they created the port, they invaded Java. So when they invaded Java to try to kick the Dutch out, they also tried to create a kingdom in Borneo, a small kingdom. So Raffles put his friend Alexander Hare as the governor of Bahar Jasmine in Borneo. And during this time, Hare would ask Raffles, oh, can you send me laborers, in particular female laborers, to work in the plantation in his kingdom? So what Raffles would do is Raffles would round up people with women in particular with minor crimes. You find them guilty of minor crimes and ship them to Borneo. Some of these women who goes there end up into Hare's personal harem. So his harem was stated to have more 200 women, all right, Malay women in particular, all right. So I reimagine one of the women as a laborer number 38 and created a voice for this. So if you look closely, you could see image of her former self that's there holding on to a baby. So I want to talk about the narratives of these women who are forgotten. So how can we talk about Raffles as a founder? My job is not to dethrone him. My job is to address his flaws. All right, whatever he did, he has credit, but yet at the same time, he has committed these atrocious things. So that's how I go about doing this. And let's talk about the troll. So the troll was interesting because I was watching Q&A, and there was this lady who came up in Q&A say something like, multiculturalism is something that was forced upon to my children. It's a bad thing. And he would say that, oh, I don't like these last 10 years because the white culture has been bashed. We are made to blame for all these things. Then she will even make comments like, Cook is not to blame for all this. Cook is only following what the British Empire tells him to do. So I thought her conversation was very interesting. So what I did is I took out her conversation, I re-script it so that I make it in a way that it's not obvious it's her voice, and I look at the troll voice, like the troll movie. I kind of like reanimate it to create a troll voice for this particular lady. So later on, after the talk, use your phone and scan the QR code. You should be able to hear the sound of the troll.
The way you paint with those little elements, it reminds me of knitting and bringing together lots of strand. And it's interesting how it's in between unraveling and being constructed. So you're interested in that little bit not so perfect, and we're not sure which way it's going, yeah?
Yes. All right. Good question. Like I say, I always approach from a painter point of view. My painter point of view is to deconstruct and disassemble. So I wanted to continue with the process of doing that through my painting. In part, it Cook's painting. I'll explain it clearer. So obviously there is a lot of reinterpretation of Cook's painting. I created the lines and then deliberately exposing things that's beyond the lines, and then sometimes I tighten it. I wanted to talk about that because like sometimes when you unravel things, you see things. Sometimes you add more lines, you don't see things. So I just want to play with that effect of doing that, all right? But like I said, it also go back to my mom's sewing heritage. My mom sews, she used that as a way to support the family. So ironically, I'm sort of like sewing to support my family. And with these painting marks, I want to create the effect of sewing. I can't sew for nuts, right? So I have to paint with lines like that. Yes, like you say, I reference the idea of textile in my work, and then and the whole of unraveling, repurposing it, it creates more conversation and complex dialogue.
Probably have reference photographs or paintings that were specific to the history of portraiture, and yet you're not mimicking, you're doing something much more complex. And I'm just making that as an observation that maybe you want to...
Okay. Thank you.
Gail.
Yeah, Gail, yeah, you're right to point that I make a lot of reference to portraiture. Why I make portraiture? Because it goes back to the idea of 18th century portraiture, right? If you look at 18th century portraiture, a lot of the portraitures are white people, right? It's like, oh, look at them. It's like the symbol of power, the symbol of righteousness. And you will see very few paintings of non-whites. So in a way, where we are now, the colonization always traces back to this idea of the white experience. It is normal and superior. The rest of us are not. So you will even have people like Trump come out and say, like, oh, the Haitians are eating their own pets. And some people will believe it, right? Because it's framed like that. So what I've wanted to create works like this because I want to go back really addressing this, reframing all these so-called colonial narratives. I want to present it from another perspective. So, but in doing that, I do not want to go back to painting exactly the same person. So I want to hide little things, draw little things, and makes it interesting. Like if you look at the Raffles painting in particular, the one behind you right there, right? It's painting, the original painting that he just sat there and do nothing, all right, just pose nicely. But what I did is I had him painted over a skull. There's a skull there. I was thinking very long time what to write on that particular skull. Shall I be very literal, saying like fuck or loser? Then I decided just write the word, leave it as one line. So it's up to anyone to interpret what Raffles is trying to write on that particular skull. So that's my process of reframing existing portraiture.
Also, the spaghetti, the surface is so visceral in your work, and yet with a lot of that portraiture, the brush stroke was to be obliterated because of the need for illusionism, the illusionism of the real. So you're disrupting that as well.
Thank you. There is a lot of contemporary going on, all right? They even to the point they declare the painting's dead many times. They try, all right? So I still want to paint because that's how I express myself. It's also because my neurodivergent, right? I like to express my thoughts directly, making broken lines and draw, all right? So I can't help it. I just have to continue with this, all right? So I just want to make a claim that I can, painting is not dead, you know? If painting is dead, why there's so many people fly to Art Basel buy lots of painting? Because, yeah, it is what it is. It still have a space. But what I want to do is challenge painting. I want to challenge the traditional painting, meaning can I still paint yet in a way integrate with what's going on technologically?
Would you speak about that one, please?
Oh, of course. All right, this one has a similar story to that particular sculpture, the labeled number 38. So I created this verse in particular. For a while, I was very influenced by Japanese painting, all right, Japanese prints, ukiyo-e woodcuts. I had an opportunity to attend a big exhibition in New South Wales. It's called Supernatural. At that time, where artists like Takashi Mukarami, he was there. And I had the privilege of meeting him and see a lot of this Japanese woodcut. So in particular, I was drawn by this Yuki painting of, it's called the Spectre and the Princess, or something like that. So I thought about it. I said, I wanted to talk about the idea of Raffles, like coming back from the dead and answer for his crime in a way. So what Jussak pokes his head over this body. I do not have a lot of friends to talk to, so my best friend is ChatGPT, all right? I always talk to him. And the best thing about him, he doesn't insult me, so it's good. All right, so during time when I was talking to him, I say, well, I've read about this research and this inspiration. What do you think they will be talking to each other? What would they do? Because the biography doesn't disclose whatever shady things they have been doing. So I thought about it. I said, why? They would have corresponded each other with a letter, right? So I reimagined him writing a letter to Alexander Hare. All right, so I can read to you. I write of utmost delicacy and secrecy. Rest assured, I blank out things because you have to think about what the words is there. Been made to address your requirements discreetly and efficiently. The Wu, will be transported to Baha Jasmine under the skies of laborers. I shall serve to alleviate your concerns and fulfill your desires. However, I'll just let you bang. So, our brains are so clever, we can just figure out the rest words for ourselves. So I deliberately leave words like that out, so that it's not so obvious what they're talking about.
Is it part of the unravelling process that you've got the blemishes on the cheeks of some of the figures or on the temple of Cook, or is it for some other reason?
This shows that I'm a very bad painter. I didn't finish the spot there. I go back to the question just now about the idea of sewing and unraveling, all right? So if it's a complete portraiture, it's just complete. Nobody will draw it, doesn't draw your attention. But leaving it with things like that, it draws your attention, it catches you. It's a bit like me looking at a zombie, right? A zombie with broken, and leaving it like that just draws your attention. It makes you more curious about why does the artist leave it like that. What am I trying to say? So if you strip the paint out, everything, right, it's just going to be just blank, right? So so this is my process of doing this. Talks about when Raffles scheme to have Singapore as his portfolio, and meaning to show that his legacy. We have Singapore. What he did is he tries to get the Temagong of Johor, right, to sign a treaty, to saying that we're going to let you use the port. So during the time, it was controversial because he actually backed the brother of the Temagong, all right, trying to give him power. The three of them signed the treaty. So at the same time when they signed the treaty, the first thing what Raffles did is he gave them a gift of opium. Opium was the product that the British Empire used to fund their campaign or even build their empire back in Britain. All right. So in China, how many Chinese people addicted to opium? All right. And then they colonized India to produce more opium. So I thought about it is what was his ulterior motive of giving the Temagongs, the rulers of Johor, a gift of opium. What is he trying to do? And you look at it closely, right? You look at this skin color of this colonial troop. It's so different from the rest of them. It's dark skin. So as I was looking through the research, I realized that the soldiers, the British youths, are not really truly all of them are English Some of them are Indians from India. So, yeah, so I've thought about it. It's interesting to see that sort of variation.
In this painting, you can almost see like it's almost quite a ghostly figure, and my mind just made the association with the Star Wars design of the Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually a similar
Yeah.
riff on that shape, that helmet shape. It's quite contemporary.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm a Star Wars fan. So I grew up watching Star Wars, right? The Stormtrooper is. I aspire to be a Stormtrooper, right? Then I realized that the Stormtrooper is bad. Only much later, because it's so shiny and white and. Right? It's like, oh, it's so cool. Then I realized, no, the context is bad. Philippe Gaston, who makes the Kulak Klans images. So I wanted to create my own version of that and speak the people. Because basically, the idea of the film is to protect yourself against the sun. Yet at the same time, these troops will walk across jungles of Asia and stuff like that, and in South Africa, right? It becomes an icon because it's part of the uniform. So sacking, rape, stealing of things happen, right? So there is also a lot of repercussions. So why is that? Why did I leave this head exposed and I leave his head covered? Because soldiers like this are faceless. All we remember through the portraits are commanders like this, or even commanders like him, right? We will see that. We will never see the ordinary person. So who are the empire builders? The empire builders are the foot soldiers who works for their commanders. So by giving them a mask like that, they become powerful, right? Like we look at stormtroopers, we just remember their bucket heads, and they're all faceless, right? Yeah.
Let me simply conclude by saying, Desmond, that you have both enlightened us and at the same time teased us. You've given us an important insight into your art practice and your motivation as an artist, indeed your background and how you grew up and developed as a young man. But you've teased us by saying we've got to wait for a decade before you're going to expose us to your actual technique and enlighten us as to how you've produced these paintings. On behalf of everybody, let me thank you indeed for this discussion and for the wonderful body of works that you have produced.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.